It's 5:40 in the morning, and you're scraping cold grease off a flat top with a putty knife, in the dark, in a parking lot behind a closed dry cleaner. And you are doing this because you cannot afford to hire anyone to do it for you. This is the part nobody films. The cart is a 10-foot vending trailer you bought used for $9,400, and the menu is one thing, birria. Slow braised beef, the consommé on the side for dipping, a single taco for $3.50, or a plate of 3 for $9. You sell it on a corner in East Houston where the lunch crowd comes out of a logistics yard and a hospital annex. And on a Good Friday, you move maybe $400 in 3 hours, and then you're sold out and you go home. You're 34. You spent 11 years in restaurant kitchens working for other people. The last 4 as a line cook making $19 an hour with no path to anything, and one day you did the math on what the owner cleared versus what you cleared. And the number made you a little sick, and that was the day the cart stopped being a daydream. So here you are, scraping a flat top in the dark. And you genuinely feel like a genius right now because the thing is working. Here's what working actually looks like in numbers, because the numbers are the whole story. One Birria plate sells for $9. The beef, the tortillas, the onion and cilantro and lime, the foil, and the cup of consommé. Your food cost is about $2.80. Call it 31%. That's good. That's better than good. In a sit-down restaurant, they fight to keep food cost under 33, and you're hitting 31 out of a trailer with one burner and no rent. No rent. Say that one out loud, because it's the entire engine of what's about to happen to you. You pay $110 a week to park at a commissary kitchen overnight. That's the licensed commercial space the health department makes you prep and store in. You can't legally do any of this out of your own house, and you pay for a permit and a cart inspection and your propane. But you don't pay $6,000 a month for a dining room nobody sits in. You don't pay a manager. You don't pay a dishwasher. It's you, your wife Marisol on weekends, and a flat top, which means when you clear $1,100 on a Saturday at a soccer tournament, almost half of that is yours. Not revenue. Yours. You start keeping a spiral notebook in the truck. Saturdays at the soccer complex on Beltway 8. Thursday nights outside the brewery in the Heights. The Wednesday lunch rush at the medical district, where a line of 40 people forms by 11:15, and you've learned to pre-portion the beef the night before so you can plate in under 90 seconds. You're not running a restaurant, you're running a route. You go where the people already are, and you leave before the slow hours can cost you anything. By the end of year 1, you've cleared about $70,000, working roughly 4 good service windows a week. You have never in your life made $70,000. And you start thinking the thought that every single person in this story thinks, the thought that is both completely correct and the seed of everything that goes wrong. If one cart makes 70, then 10 carts make 700. So you build the second one. You take the savings and you have a second trailer fabricated, nicer this time, wrapped in your colors, and you hire a guy named Eddie who cooked alongside you for 2 years, and you trust him with your name on the side of a truck. You give Eddie the brewery route and the tournaments, and you take the medical district, and for about 8 months it is glorious. 2 carts, almost double the cash. You move Marisol off the weekend shifts because now you can afford to. And one night she sets down a stack of folded napkins she's been rolling at the kitchen table, and she says quietly that she likes this version of you better, the one who isn't tired all the way down. She says it once, she doesn't repeat it. You buy the 3rd cart, then the 4th. And somewhere in there, a man named David Okonkwo eats at your medical district window 4 days in a row. And on the 4th day, he doesn't order, he just hands you a card. He runs a regional commercial real estate group. He tells you that you don't have a food cart, you have a brand, and the difference is worth millions, and you should be franchising. Franchising. The word does something to you. You drive home doing the math again, except now the math is national. Here's what franchising actually is underneath the word, because David explains about a third of it, and the other two-thirds you learn the hard way. When you franchise, you stop selling Birria. You start selling the system for selling Birria. A franchisee, some guy with $180,000 in a dream, in Dallas or San Antonio, pays you an upfront franchise fee, call it $35,000, for the right to use your name, your recipes, your suppliers, your operating manual. Then, for as long as he operates, he pays you a royalty, a percentage of his gross sales right off the top every single week, whether he's profitable or not. The industry runs that royalty somewhere between 5 and 8%. You set yours at 7. 7% of everyone's sales, forever, and you don't have to scrape a single flat top. But there's a catch, and the catch is a federal document called a Franchise Disclosure Document, the FDD, and it is the reason franchising is not a thing you do on a Tuesday. You can't legally sell a franchise in the United States without one. It's a $50,000 legal lift to produce. The lawyers, the audited financials, the disclosures. And it locks you into promises about what you'll provide. Training, support, a supply chain. The moment you take that first franchise fee, you have made a legal commitment to make that stranger in Dallas succeed. You do it anyway. Of course you do. You pull $40,000 from the business and you borrow the rest against the carts, and 10 months later, you have an FDD and a website and a slick deck, and you sell your first 3 franchises in a single quarter. You are, on paper, no longer a cook, you're a franchisor. The first wave is intoxicating. Your name goes up in Dallas, in San Antonio, in a strip mall in Sugar Land. Each new owner wires you $35,000 on signing, and then the royalty checks start trickling in. $500 here, $900 there, money that arrives while you're asleep. You hire a person whose entire job is selling more franchises. By month 18, you've sold 11 units. By the end of year 3, you've signed agreements for 30 locations across Texas, and a trade magazine runs a photo of you standing next to your original beat-up cart with the headline calling you the fastest-growing regional food concept in the state. 30 locations. You did it. The notebook math came true. Except the Birria in San Antonio doesn't taste like your Birria. You find this out the way you find out everything that matters now, which is too late and from a stranger. It's a Google review, 2 stars, on the San Antonio location. Used to love this in Houston. This is not the same. Dry, no consommé, 20-minute wait. And you almost scroll past it because it's one review, except the next one says the same thing, and the one after that, and you realize you are reading about a version of your food that you have never tasted and would never serve. Here's what happened, and it's not sabotage, it's physics. When it was your cart, the recipe lived in your hands. You knew when the beef was right because you'd braised it 10,000 times. But you can't ship your hands to San Antonio. So you wrote the recipe down and the franchisee read it, and somewhere between your hands and his line cook's hands, the braise got rushed, the beef went dry, and the consommé, the thing your whole identity is built on, started getting skipped on busy days to save 4 minutes. And the brutal part, the part that keeps you up, it doesn't matter that it's his location. To the customer, it's yours. Your name is on the wall. A franchise system has exactly one product, and it is not Birria. It's sameness. The promise that the thing in San Antonio is the thing in Houston. The instant that promise breaks at one location, it doesn't break one location. It bleeds into all 30, because the next guy reads, "This is not the same." And now he's wondering about the one near him. You scaled the locations. You did not scale the thing that made the locations work. And underneath the quality problem, quietly, there's a money problem, and it's worse. You'd assumed that 30 locations meant 30 streams of royalty, and you'd be rich. But royalty is 7% of their sales. And a brand new Birria location in a market that's never heard of, you doesn't do Houston numbers in month one. It does about a third of Houston numbers, and it's bleeding cash, and it's terrified. And it is calling you. Because remember the FDD. You promised support, you promised training, you promised to make them succeed. So now your week is not making food. It's flying to Dallas to retrain a line cook. It's on the phone at 11 p.m. with the sugar landowner who's 3 months behind on his lease and crying. It's discovering that 2 of your franchisees, to save money, quietly stopped buying your pre-portioned beef from your commissary and started sourcing cheaper beef locally off-spec, which is why it tastes wrong, and which is a direct violation of the agreement, and now you have to decide whether to enforce a contract against a guy who's already drowning. The royalty checks are real, but they're small and they're slow. The cost of holding the whole thing together is enormous, and it's now. You raised your location count and your overhead at the exact same time, and you never had. The franchise consultants have a benchmark for this, and you blew right past it. You never had 2 consecutive quarters of positive free cash flow on the model before you started multiplying it. You just had a good cart and a good feeling. You're now the owner of 30 restaurants and you are, somehow, broke. The reckoning comes in the commissary at 2 a.m., the same commissary you've been parking that original cart in for 5 years. You're there because the commissary itself is the bottleneck and you finally see it. Your whole system was supposed to run on one promise. Every location gets the same beef, braised the same way, from one central kitchen you control. That's how Cousin's Maine Lobster does it. Every franchisee buys the lobster from the founders, and the supply chain is the quality control. But your one commissary in Houston can't braise enough beef for 30 locations across a state. And you never built the second one, and you never built the third, because every dollar went into selling the next franchise instead of supplying the last one. So the franchisees who were too far away just improvised. And every improvisation was a small fracture in the only product you actually sold, which was sameness. You sit on an overturned milk crate next to the cart, and you get honest about it finally. You didn't grow a business. You sold a promise 30 times that you'd only built the machine to keep 4 times. Every problem you have, the dry beef, the broke owners, the 2-star reviews, your own empty bank account, is the same problem wearing 30 different faces. You scaled the number and not the system. You scaled the want and not the discipline. So you do the unglamorous thing, the thing nobody writes a trade magazine headline about. You stop selling franchises, cold. Your franchise salesman doesn't understand, and then he quits. And you let him. You take the money you have left, and you do the boring, expensive, invisible work you should have done before unit number 2. You build a second commissary in Dallas, a real one, that braises beef to 1 spec and ships it cold to every location in a 200-mile radius, so that no line cook anywhere ever has to make the braise. They just heat what you sent. You rewrite the operating manual so the recipe doesn't live in anyone's hands anymore. It lives in the supply chain. You fly out and you sit with the franchisees who are barely hanging on, and instead of selling them anything, you just help them fix their food cost and their labor, and you let 2 locations that can't be saved close because 30 mediocre locations is worth less than 20 that taste right. You go from 30 back down to 22. On paper, you shrank, and nobody claps for you. Marisol asks one night if you're okay, and you tell her the truth, which is that you don't know yet, and she doesn't try to fix it. She just stays in the room. But the reviews start to turn. Slowly. The Dallas locations, now eating off the central commissary, start tasting like Houston. A franchisee in Austin you'd written off calls to say he had his first profitable month and he's almost in tears. The royalty checks, fewer of them now, start getting bigger because the locations that survived are actually working, and a location that works pays you forever, and a location that fails pays you nothing but heartbreak. By year 6, you have 28 locations again. But this time you got there from the supply chain out, not the sales deck down. This time the second cart you build is a kitchen, not a billboard. You think about that original cart sometimes. It's still parked in the Houston commissary. You don't run it anymore, but you can't sell it. Because here's the thing you finally understand, standing in front of it. When you had one cart, you thought your product was Birria. It wasn't. The Birria was easy. Anyone can braise beef. What you were actually selling the entire time was the promise that it would taste the same tomorrow as it did today. That's the only thing a hungry stranger is really buying. Not the food, but the certainty of the food. And the moment you tried to make that promise in 30 places at once, you found out it doesn't live in a recipe, and it doesn't live in a headline. And it sure as hell doesn't live in a franchise fee. It lives in the system. The slow, boring, unglamorous system you have to build before you grow, not after. Because growth doesn't create the discipline. Growth just exposes whether you ever had any. One cart didn't make 70. You made 70 with your hands 10,000 times. The whole trick of the chain was learning to build a machine that could do what your hands did without your hands. That was always the whole thing. That was the only thing.